Arrays in Java. First of all, what is an array? Well, you can think of an array as a list of items that are stored inside of one variable or container or box, or however you want to think about variables. They're very useful because it's nice having a list of stuff that we can access using just one variable. You can imagine if we had 100 names we had to store, and every time we wanted to access a name, we'd have string A equals Grant, and string B equals etc. etc. Writing that 100 times is pretty painful. So that's where arrays come in extremely handy. So let's learn how to define an array. We do that by first typing the type of variable we're going to put in the array, and then we open a square bracket and close a square bracket. And this means we're going to have an array or list of strings. Then type my strings as the variable name is equal to, open your curly brace, and start adding the items that you want to have in your array. So word, me, whatever it is, loppy, and close off your line. Now we have an array with 3 items in it, all called different names or strings. So how do we access, say, string number 2 or 1 or 3? Well, let's look at that. Let's have a system.out.println, and we're going to print out from my strings, and the way we access a particular item in the list is by opening a square bracket and then giving it the number where that item lies. Now in arrays and in programming in general, the first item lies under index 0. So most programming languages use what's called a zero-based index. Item number 2 lies under 1, and item number 3 lies under index 2. So let's pull out index number 1, and we should get the word me transmitted back to us when we run it. And there we have it. So if you're not familiar with this indexing concept, if you only take away one thing from this lecture, it should be that indexing is zero-based as a general rule in pretty much every programming language you can think of. Right? We don't just have to have strings. We can, of course, create arrays of integers. And we will call this my ints is equal to, and we can pass it over any number that we like of integers, close off our brackets, and declare the line. Accessing the integers in here is the same as with my strings. There's one final thing we need to know about arrays that you'll come across very often, because when you have an array, you might want to loop through it until the array is empty. So one final piece of information you need to know is how long is my array? How many elements are inside it? The way you find that out, and I'm just going to do a system.out.println for this, is by accessing the array.length property. And that counts the number of elements that you have in your array. So in my ints, we have 6 elements. And then if I compile and run, we get the number 6 presented back to us. That's going to come in handy when we look at loops in Java, so we can extract all of the values out of an array. Knowing the length is also useful if we do something like accessing a certain element in the array. As long as we have the maximum length of it, we can make sure using some careful coding, that the index never goes past the maximum element, because if it does, we will get some kind of error. And I'll just show you what I mean. If I change my strings to access element number 5, which doesn't exist, I'm going to compile, which is fine, then I'll run. And look, we get this red writing that tells us the array index is out of bounds. As in, hey man, you've gone past the line and I'm going to crash now. So if inside of this system out statement where we accessed element 5, we could also have something like an if-else statement that checked that we could actually access element 5. That's just a side note. So the main thing to take away from this lecture is the construction of arrays and the fact you can put different types of arrays together.